Russian radars failed as Ukraine awaited. Then the fortress erupted within seconds. The borderlands near Belgar lay silent at 4:17 a.m., deep in Russian territory at fortified nuke base 22, before everything exploded. Caliber cruise missiles, each exceeding $1 million in value, sliced unexpectedly through the clouds from the Black Sea. Dozens of jamming UAVs worth $85,000 apiece followed close behind, saturating the airspace with static as they closed in on Ukraine's drone manufacturing facilities nearly 200 meters inland. This wasn't any ordinary strike. It represented a deliberate effort to eliminate Ukraine's asymmetric advantage at its origin. Ukrainian Patriot PAC-3 interceptors, each bearing a $3 million price tag, surged into the sky, meeting incoming missiles in spectacular fireballs. Sirens screamed, the heavens blazed, and within moments, the initial stages of contemporary warfare clicked into position. Swift, brutal, and merciless. We appreciate your continued support during this winter period. Drop a 1 in the comments if you're doing well, a 2 if your morale remains high, or a 3 if you require support. The initial attack struck with merciless accuracy. Russian strategists merged velocity, overwhelming force, and electronic disruption to target Ukraine's drone infrastructure at its core. Successive waves of Caliber cruise missiles, each valued above $1 million, pierced the pre-dawn atmosphere while jamming UAVs priced at $85,000 each pushed forward, blanketing Ukrainian skies with interference. Their objectives were explicit and intentional. UAV production facilities that had been supplying Ukraine's battle lines with affordable reconnaissance and attack drones for months. UKRAINIAN défense activité d'Astoli. Patriot PAC-3 interceptors costing $3 million apiece rocketed skyward, destroying multiple incoming missiles in dazzling aerial detonations. However, saturation achieved its objective. 2 missiles penetrated the protective barrier. One impacted a significant drone manufacturing complex on Dnipro's periphery, detonating within the primary assembly hall. The explosion collapsed steel structures, ignited fuel reserves, and dispersed partially completed UAVs throughout the compound like debris. Come sunrise, the devastation was impossible to ignore. The installation lay in ruins. Several chief engineers perished, many more sustained injuries, and equipment and drones worth tens of millions were transformed into charred wreckage. Satellite photographs revealed collapsed ceilings, liquefied electrical lines, and burn patterns extending hundreds of yards past the strike zone. Still, the attack's genuine impact transcended physical infrastructure and hardware. This constituted a strategic effort to stifle Ukraine's ingenuity, to silence the facilities where inexpensive concepts had been converted into battlefield advantages. Russia's target wasn't merely industrial plants. It targeted forward momentum, morale, and innovation at its source. Momentarily, the assault accomplished its goal. Manufacturing ceased. Military leaders reevaluated. The skies grew silent once more. Yet underneath the destruction, something different started forming. The attack didn't shatter Ukraine's determination. It refined it. As rescue teams navigated through the smoldering debris, a considerably more dangerous counter-response was already developing. One that would guarantee this opening assault wouldn't remain unanswered. Hit the like button, then comment a 4 if you're keeping up, 5 if you're worried, or 6 if you desire peace. Far underground in Kharkiv, distant from the demolished drone facility's smoking remains, Ukraine commenced planning its response. Inside a fortified subterranean bunker, UAV technicians, electronic warfare experts, and high-ranking field officers assembled around a solitary planning table. No grand declarations were made. No wavering occurred. The strike had clarified one reality: retaliation was unavoidable. The operation received its designation almost instantaneously: Black Swarm. This wouldn't constitute a basic drone assault. Ukrainian planners understood that Russia's protective layers surrounding Belgar were comprehensive, concentrated, and ruthless. Penetrating them required coordination spanning aerial, terrestrial, and extended-range capabilities. The plan's initial component focused on electronic warfare UAVs engineered to maintain low altitude and overwhelm Russian radar frequencies with disruption. Their objective wasn't annihilation, but obscuration, generating sufficient disorder to fragment command structures at the most critical juncture. Following them would arrive a more savage element: suicide drones equipped with anti-tank explosives. These craft were designed to transform intersection into a hazard. Should Russian platforms like Panzer or Tor engage them, the drones would explode mid-flight, dispersing shrapnel directly toward radar installations, missile launchers, and vulnerable personnel. Every defensive shot Russia attempted would potentially harm its own systems. High above the combat zone, MiG-29 fighters would maintain orbits at secure ranges, prepared to deploy air-to-ground ordnance the instant a radar transmitter reactivated. Their function was restriction, guaranteeing no surviving detection equipment could reconstruct the defensive overview. Simultaneously, Ukrainian artillery formations prepared for concentrated bombardment. HIMARS platforms and M777 artillery pieces were pre-targeted on external defensive emplacements, fuel storage, and vehicle assembly zones, ready to engage once the air defense network fractured. Ground forces stood ready. Leopard tanks alongside aging T-64 models were stationed along hidden border passages, engines dormant, crews maintaining silence. They weren't intended to spearhead the offensive, but to capitalize on it, advancing solely after the aerial mayhem completed its mission. What materialized from the Kharkiv bunker represented something unprecedented. Not a swarm operating independently, but a synchronized multi-tier offensive where economical drones, sophisticated aircraft, long-distance rockets, and armored formations functioned as one integrated mechanism. This transcended improvisation. It became established strategy. When Black Swarm initiated, it wouldn't simply retaliate. It would reshape how the conflict's subsequent phase would unfold. If you missed the prior video, this situation won't completely resonate because this offensive didn't start this evening. The first phase of Operation Black Swarm launched at 10:05 a.m. 15 hastily modified electronic warfare drones, each roughly pickup-head size and equipped with basic broadband interference systems, departed from improvised launching areas near Sumy. They maintained low flight profiles, staying beneath 200 feet elevation, their navigation systems programmed with predetermined GPS waypoints. Above them, two MiG-29 aircraft streamed into the nocturnal atmosphere, deploying multiple decoy flares and electronic lures engineered to entice Russian radars into target acquisition. Minutes later, Russian controllers at Nuke Base 22 activated their countermeasures. The installation was surrounded by Panzer S-1 combination gun missile platforms and Tor M2 close-range interceptors, both engineered to eliminate drones. Torrents of 30mm autocannon rounds and surface-to-air projectiles illuminated the darkness, pursuing the approaching drones. However, what should have functioned as organized defense rapidly deteriorated. The Ukrainian interference systems broadcast erratic disruption pulses throughout numerous frequencies, interacting with the MiG-deployed decoys. Radar displays within Russian control centers transformed from distinct contacts to scrambled interference. Certain operators identified phantom signatures. Others watched their equipment become entirely ineffective. Amid the confusion, defensive batteries discharged into vacant airspace while interceptors locked onto false targets. For approximately 5 minutes, the protections meant to safeguard one of Russia's most vital nuclear locations were essentially incapacitated. It represented merely a narrow temporal window, but it was precisely the window Ukraine required. From the Ukrainian standpoint, this marked the entrance being forced. Every commander within the Kharkiv bunker recognized that the entire operation's success or collapse depended on this opening action. If the interference drones were eliminated too rapidly, or if Russian radar recaptured its situational awareness, the subsequent waves would be decimated before achieving their objectives. As the clock approached 1:10 a.m., the situation became evident. Russian defenses were fumbling in darkness. The initial wave had succeeded. That momentary disruption in the skies above Belgar wasn't simply a tactical achievement. It served as the indicator for the following phase to commence. What emerged next would challenge the absolute boundaries of Ukraine's resourcefulness, deploying weaponry designed not merely to strike, but to explode catastrophically even when intercepted. The entrance had been breached, and through it, the genuine tempest was about to unleash. At 1:12 a.m., while Russian controllers continued wrestling to restore their radar capabilities, Operation Black Swarm's second phase materialized. This iteration wasn't limited to interference transmissions. It represented raw, destructive force assembled with urgency. 40 improvised drones, each transporting a 30-pound Soviet TM-62 anti-tank mine attached to its frame, approached low from 3 separate trajectories. They weren't constructed to endure, they were constructed to detonate. As the initial cluster violated the outer defensive perimeter, Russian Panzer S-1 batteries and Tor interceptors finally acquired their targets. Defensive fire swept across the headlands, but each successful interception activated Ukraine's actual strategy. When those drones sustained hits, the TM-62 mines detonated mid-flight, converting the night sky into a shrapnel tempest. Razor-edged fragments tore through radar arrays and circuitry. Within minutes, 2 Panzer platforms were devastated beyond functionality. Their tracking radars perforated and their operators either injured or compelled to evacuate their positions. At the identical moment, exceeding 25 miles distant, Ukrainian teams operating HIMARS rocket systems and M777 howitzers implemented their bombardment protocol. Precision-guided projectiles arced across the frontier and impacted the external boundary of Nuke Base 22. Detonations cascaded throughout fuel reserves, vehicle concentration zones, and fortified quarters, plunging defenders deeper into disorder. The combined strain from aerial and terrestrial sources meant Russian controllers were operating without visibility and communication, overwhelmed by both fragmentation and artillery barrages. For Ukraine, this constituted the pivotal moment. Russia's air defense network's effectiveness was beginning to crumble. The second wave was never anticipated to annihilate the complete shield, but to create breaches sufficiently wide for the strike element behind it. That objective was succeeding. By 1:16 a.m., smoke and flames covered the radar corridor. Communications chatter within the Russian command facility became desperate. Some formations reported zero visual acquisition. Others shouted about incoming volleys they couldn't monitor. What had started as a confident defensive stance was degrading into confusion. The network supposed to protect Russia's nuclear resources was no longer whole. It was fragmenting incrementally under the burden of crude drones, Soviet-era munitions, and precision Western firepower. Through those fractures, the third and most lethal phase was already approaching. By 1:18 a.m., with Russia's radar network compromised and its aerial defenses staggering, Ukraine launched the third and most devastating wave. From hidden deployment sites across the frontier, 70 suicide drones surged into darkness, dividing into 3 assault vectors, each transported between 5 and 10 pounds of high explosives, modest by traditional measurements, but catastrophic when delivered in concentrated numbers. Their trajectories were offset, engineered to converge on Nuke Base 22 within under 2 minutes. High overhead, 2 Ukrainian MiG-29s maintained circular patterns at secure distance, their radars focused on the final surviving Russian detection equipment. At the precise instant the swarm penetrated the inner boundary, the aircraft launched AGM-88 HARM missiles, traveling at twice sonic velocity toward the remaining radar transmitters. Moments later, brilliant orange explosions bloomed where the radars had operated, casting defenders into greater blindness. On the surface, the assault broadened from concealed assembly locations just several miles west of the border. Leopard 2 tanks and older T-64 models advanced forward beneath nighttime concealment. Their power plants roared as they penetrated Russian territory, engaging peripheral guard stations and reinforced shelters. The Leopards, with their contemporary optics and targeting systems, eliminated Russian armored assets in quick succession while the T-64s delivered suppressive fire against entrenched infantry. Within the base boundary, pandemonium intensified. Russian forces discharged frantically at the incoming swarm, but the sheer quantity of drones overpowered them. Some UAVs plunged straight into armored vehicles, transforming them into burning wrecks. Others struck the upper sections of fuel transporters or crashed into station trucks, triggering secondary detonations. In no fewer than 2 instances, drones impacted already compromised air defense installations, detonating their own munitions and generating chain reactions that ripped through adjacent vehicles. The battlefield had transformed into a multi-domain conflagration. Drones flooding the atmosphere, MiGs demolishing radar positions, tanks penetrating the outer fortifications, and artillery continuously hammering from the rear. For the protectors of Nuke Base 22, the offensive no longer resembled a sequence of separate attacks. It was a coordinated barrage, a storm engineered to strike from all directions simultaneously. This was the Operation Zenith, the instant Ukraine's audacious gamble transformed from daring into actuality. As the smoke and fire proliferated throughout the facility, it became apparent the base's protections weren't simply yielding, they were collapsing. By 1:24 a.m., the assault achieved its catastrophic apex. The suicide drone swarm penetrated what minimal defenses remained at Nuke Base 22 and struck with fatal accuracy. Multiple drones slammed straight into fuel reserves, igniting columns of flame that illuminated the nocturnal heavens. Additional drones crashed into the command facility's ventilation systems, initiating violent secondary explosions that collapsed sections of the subterranean structure. Toward the compound's eastern sector, a cluster of drones ripped through hardened aircraft shelters where long-range bombers sat vulnerable. Enormous fireballs engulfed the aircraft within seconds. Then arrived the most disastrous impact. One drone flying lower than the others breached the nuclear fuel handling section. The detonation wasn't atomic, but the chemical interaction of unstable materials generated a shock wave equivalent to a 500-pound traditional bomb. Concrete shelters fractured, metal barriers tore from their mountings, and complete sections of the installation collapsed inward. A fireball hundreds of feet tall erupted upward, visible from miles beyond the frontier. The earth itself shuddered, sending dust and fragments raining upon escaping Russian personnel. For more than 7 hours, Belgorod 22 remained silent. No communications, no broadcasts, nothing except smoke and turmoil. What commenced as a tactical operation had escalated into a strategic upheaval. Russia's nuclear stronghold was no longer protected, and the perception of invincibility had been consumed by flames. Come daybreak, the magnitude of devastation at Nuke Base 22 was incontestable. Complete bomber squadrons lay in contorted ruins. Fuel reserves continued burning, and hundreds of Russian soldiers and specialists were numbered among the casualties. Ukraine had accomplished the inconceivable. It had attacked a strategic nuclear facility on Russian territory and disabled it. In one night, hundreds of lives were extinguished and billions in equipment obliterated, destroying the impression of Russian invulnerability. The strategic consequences were instantaneous. Moscow was compelled to redirect command functions to backup facilities, leaving its nuclear deterrent capacity in the region diminished for days. NATO elevated its readiness postures throughout Eastern Europe, and international petroleum prices surged nearly 9% as markets processed the shock of nuclear instability. What was designed as a retributive attack against Ukraine's drone sector had reversed into a moment of worldwide significance. Still, more profound questions persisted. If one wave of improvised drones and combined operations could dismantle one of Russia's premier installations, which other locations were genuinely secure? How would Moscow respond to restore its prestige and deterrent power? Yet beyond the tactical and strategic dimensions existed a message more significant. Contemporary warfare is no longer dominated exclusively by expensive projectiles or stealth aircraft. It is determined by innovation, coordinated tactics, and the capacity to evolve. Amid the inferno, Ukrainian personnel were observed assisting wounded Russian captives from the rubble, demonstrating that even in absolute conflict, compassion can endure. The concluding image was disturbing. An enormous pillar of black smoke ascending over Belgorod, scorched drones scattered across the terrain, and in the distance, Ukrainian troops helping a captured Russian soldier stumble forward beneath the crimson heavens.